In 1996, Harlan Ullman and James Wade introduced rapid dominance, later called shock and awe, in a Pentagon-funded study at the National Defense University. The idea is simple but devastating. Overwhelm your enemy with massive, fast, and precise firepower so intense that they collapse before they can even react. One moment, the enemy is preparing for war. The next, they're paralyzed, psychologically and militarily, forced into surrender before the fight truly begins. The first real test? Iraq, 2003. Within hours, the U.S. struck over 500 targets. Within weeks, that number climbed to more than 5,000 in a sweeping campaign against Saddam Hussein's regime. But today, this doctrine appears to be unfolding again, this time in Iran, and at a much more extreme scale. Reports suggest that what's happening now already exceeds the intensity of the first day of the Iraq War. The U.S. alone has reportedly hit over 1,000 targets, alongside Israeli strikes. But here's the shocking part. In just 15 days, around 15,000 targets have been struck across Iran, using everything from fighter jets and missiles to drones, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and bunker-busting bombs dropped by stealth bombers. That's a level of speed and scale we've never seen before. We're talking about 1,000 targets per day, in a campaign costing roughly $1 billion daily. And here's the most shocking part. Most of these targets are selected in real time, sometimes just hours before the strike. So the big question is, how did the U.S. build a list of 15,000 targets in just 2 weeks in a country as vast as Iran? Traditionally, this would take months, sometimes even a full year, requiring thousands of analysts, intelligence experts, and military planners. So how did they do it this fast? The answer lies in a secret U.S. project that's been running for over a decade, one involving major tech companies working alongside the Pentagon and pointing toward a very dark future. Today, we're diving into Project Maven, one of the most controversial and powerful military AI programs of our time, and we'll explore how advanced AI systems, like the ones you might be using right now, are being adapted for warfare, and what that means for the future. Let's begin. On day one of the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran, a site in the city of Manab was hit. The target had been identified by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, which is responsible for supplying target data to U.S. Central Command, as part of a much larger strike package. A New York Times investigation revealed that the targeted site was originally linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy, making it a legitimate military target. But there was a critical problem. The intelligence was outdated, dating back to 2013. By the time of the strike, much of the site had been transformed into a primary school called the Good Tree, with classrooms and sports facilities replacing large parts of the former military buildings. Despite that, the location was struck 3 times. The result? At least 170 children killed and around 90 injured, almost the entire student body. An investigation is now underway, with early findings pointing to U.S. responsibility despite initial denials. Notably, much of the Western media stopped short of calling the incident a war crime. But this incident may reveal something much bigger. Because what you're seeing here could be a direct consequence of what we're talking about today, the growing role of artificial intelligence in modern warfare. On January 9, 2026, the Pentagon released a document titled Strategy for Accelerating U.S. Military AI Dominance. The memo was directed at top military leaders and defense agencies, and it makes one thing clear. The US is racing to dominate AI at every level, from managing government systems to integrating AI directly into what's known as the kill chain, the process of identifying and striking targets. And that's where the real story begins. So what is the kill chain? In simple terms, it's the full cycle of war, from identifying a target, to verifying it, to striking it, and confirming its destruction. Now here's where things get more controversial. The Pentagon's new AI strategy openly calls for removing what it describes as utopian idealism. What does that actually mean? It means pushing toward AI systems with fewer restrictions, less accountability, and far more operational freedom, even in life and death decisions. And this brings us to the centerpiece of this story, Project Maven. Back in 2017, a small secretive team inside the Pentagon set out to turn AI into a core military tool. Led by Marine Colonel Drew Kuker, the mission was driven by one major fear: falling behind China in military AI. The team pushed for faster targeting decisions, even with limited human verification. And despite internal resistance, they moved forward, bringing in tech giants like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Google eventually withdrew after internal protests, as employees feared the technology could be used to build autonomous weapons capable of selecting and striking targets without human control. But the project didn't stop. A key player was Palantir, a powerful data analytics company that helped build the backbone of Maven. The goal was clear: create an AI system capable of processing massive amounts of data, turning it into actionable intelligence, and accelerating real-time military decisions. Today, Project Maven reportedly pulls data from over 175 sources, helping identify targets, plan strikes, and assess damage at speeds never seen before. It also supports everything else: logistics, weapons deployment, fuel, transport, essentially the entire military system. The result? A process that once took months or even a year can now happen in hours or minutes. In traditional warfare, up to 80% of personnel worked behind the scenes, analyzing data, reviewing footage, and building target lists. Now, much of that work is done by AI, and that changes everything. Until recently, human analysts could process less than 4% of incoming surveillance data, essentially searching for needles in a massive haystack. That's where Project Maven comes in. It can scan the entire haystack in seconds, identifying and prioritizing targets with incredible speed. Here's an example of its impact. The U.S. Army's 18th Airborne Corps once set a targeting record using 2,000 soldiers during training. After adopting AI tools from Palantir and Maven, the same record was achieved faster with just 20 people. Maven has already been used in multiple operations before Iran supporting Ukraine in 2022, and U.S. strikes in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen in 2024. But Iran represents the largest and most intense deployment, yet a live test for future conflicts, possibly against China. And Maven's role goes beyond targeting. The Pentagon now uses AI to simulate wars, generate battle scenarios, and plan operations. In 2025, the U.S. partnered with AI firms to build systems capable of analyzing millions of possible battle scenarios, even with limited data, allowing planners to pick the strategies most likely to succeed. At the core of Maven is Claude, the famous language model from Anthropic, a competitor to OpenAI's ChatGPT, with a market value of $380 billion. Recently, a public conflict emerged. The U.S. government wanted to use Claude in its military AI programs without restrictions for intelligence and autonomous weapons. Anthropic and its founder, Dario Amodei, resisted, warning that this could open a Pandora's box. After pressure, contracts shifted to competitors like OpenAI and Elon Musk's xAI. Despite this, Claude remains a critical part of Maven and reportedly played a major role in the Iran campaign, even after Trump's administration decided not to use Anthropic's products. Which brings us to the key question: what is the United States ultimately trying to achieve? The truth is, the U.S. goal is terrifying, especially for anyone who cares about human rights and the value of human life. Through Project Maven, the U.S. military aims to identify and select 1,000 targets in just 1 hour, not 24 hours like the daily strikes on Iran. They're also developing swarms of autonomous drones that can identify, select, and strike targets completely independently, even if communication is lost. This effort has been underway since early 2022, with massive data collection, including thousands of images of Chinese military and commercial ships, training algorithms for fully autonomous operations. That's why Iran is essentially a live test, a rehearsal for a potentially larger conflict with China. But is AI really more precise than humans? From a purely military perspective, not entirely. AI still misidentifies targets, sometimes hitting civilians or irrelevant locations. From an ethical and legal perspective, the problem is even worse. Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, warns that relying fully on AI removes any human safeguard, eliminating meaningful accountability in war. We've seen the consequences. Gaza, Yemen, and now Iran, AI-driven strikes with minimal human oversight can multiply destruction tenfold. As Nicole Van Rij, head of the Stop Killer Robots Coalition, explains, AI doesn't just make targeting faster, it reduces human control over warfare to a mere formality. In Gaza, an Israeli intelligence source told The Guardian that AI provided an endless list of targets, and humans were reduced to approving strikes in mere seconds, adding almost no value. If you found this episode valuable, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends so they can stay informed too.